Hey, good Thursday evening, everybody. It's Chief Meteorologist Brad Panovich back in the saddle tonight. It is now June 4th, 2026. It's Thursday, obviously the big day for the drought monitor, which we'll be talking a lot about tonight. But we got to talk about this gorgeous weather. I mean, this is almost unheard of for this time of year to have just this type of amazing, dry, cool weather. Love to see rainfall, but I'll be honest with you, this is about as nice as it gets by summer standards. This is our view from our Dallas camera, our Mr. Sparky camera network. Absolutely severe clear out there, not a cloud to be found. It's warm, but it's not hot, and it's very dry. Drought monitor for the second week in a row. We have improvement. That is great to see. This is kind of the way you get out of drought. It doesn't happen all at once. It happens stair step. So for the second week in a row, we've seen significant improvement. And again, now only 87% of North Carolina is in severe drought. That was about a 6% reduction from last week. Extreme drought has dropped about 6%. We've got a big area of what just moderate drought now. The wettest part of our area has been like the Midlands of South Carolina up into the upstate. So there's been some pretty dramatic improvement. The problem is that might be stopping this week because the next 7 days, there's just not a lot of rain in the forecast. And as beautiful as this weather is right now, it's incredibly dry. It's very warm. It's perfect environment for evaporation, and it really dries out everything, not only plants, but the soil. So dew points in the 50s and 40s feels great, but air temperatures are in the mid 80s. We jumped 30 degrees from the morning low to the afternoon high. That's dry air, and that will dry things out really, really quickly. Now, the high was 85, but the new high is 86 because that's our current temperature. Now, tonight, beautiful. Once the sun goes down, which, by the way, is 8:34 p.m., so later and later sunsets, by the middle of June, our sunset will be 8:41, which is the latest it gets in the entire year. So we'll be into the 50s probably again tomorrow morning. If we do that, if we get to 59 tomorrow morning, which I'm forecasting, that would be the first time that we've had 4 consecutive days below 60 in the summer, I think, in like 3 years. So it's wild to think it could be this cool tonight. All of last summer, we only had 4 days for the whole summer where the low temperature was below 60 degrees. So that's really saying something. Now, one negative of this pattern is the air is not really mixing up. We're not seeing clouds. We've got intense sunshine, high pressure, and that leads to a pretty dramatic problem here, and that's air quality. We get air quality alerts and ozone action days on conditions like this because high pressure overhead traps all the pollutants near the ground. And what happens on these sunny days, the sun is great, but it mixes with all of those volatile organic compounds near the surface, which is what's coming out of your tailpipe of cars, 2-cycle engines, and that chemical reaction of sunlight and emissions creates a lot of ground level ozone, which is bad for your breathing because your body just can't absorb oxygen in this situation. And so if you're very young, very old, if you have respiratory issues, this can really impact you. So just a heads up, tomorrow we are going to see some of those issues raise their head because of the high pressure. Now, over the next couple of days, high pressure not only traps pollutants, it keeps clouds from forming, it keeps showers and storms from forming, and it makes a lot of heat. Sinking air, compression we call it, heats up the air. When it sinks and it's dry, things get pretty hot. So the next couple of days, little to no rain and really warm conditions. In fact, the 5-day forecast for rainfall, not looking great. I mean, I think our best chance of rain might end up being Monday into Tuesday. And right now, even that looks to be like a 40 or 50% chance. I would not get too optimistic for significant rain because the 7-day rainfall forecast, and this is why I think we're going to see a reversal of our improvement in the drought. We need 1 inch of rain per week to break even. That's normal rainfall for a week in the summer, right? We're probably not even going to get that. So that means we'll be adding to the deficit, not reducing it. So, if you put this in financial terms, we still got bills to pay every week, even though we've got to get out of debt. So the problem here is not only we're not paying our normal bills, we're not reducing that debt that we have from the drought. So that's a problem. You got to at least pay the bills so that we're not getting into more debt. And right now we're not being able to pay the bills this week because we're not getting enough rain. And with this hot, humid, dry weather, this just sucks moisture out of everything. That's the thing about summer. Most of our droughts typically form in the summer and fall because our water usage is high, and also the environment uses a lot of moisture in the form of evaporation, plants using it, your grass is soaking up every drop it can get, the trees are. So if you're not getting adequate rainfall, it can really get bad pretty quickly from a drought standpoint. And high pressure parked over us really through this weekend and next weekend is not ideal. In fact, it looks like it stays pretty hot for the next 6 to 10 days. Now the question is, will we get some rainfall? There's some hints that we could see a low pressure develop in the Gulf, and if that happens, we could see moisture try to come up to the north at some point, but it's probably going to be beyond the 7-day forecast, probably next weekend and beyond. So between now and our next drought monitor update, I expect below average rainfall and probably a reversal of some of our improvements. Not like a huge deal, but we'll probably see some of the severe drought creep back in, maybe a little expansion in some spots, and we'll definitely have to keep an eye on that. And water restrictions aren't going anywhere, by the way, because our lake levels are just not recovering very quickly. It takes a long time. So the weekend forecast looks pretty nice, hot, dry, but also getting a little more humid on Sunday. Great weekend for the pool or the lake. We look at your Jerry Hunt Supercenter 7-day forecast. Really is a spectacular weekend if you like the hot, dry weather. Temperatures will cool a little bit Monday, Tuesday because of clouds and showers maybe, but not a ton of rain. Next week is going to be the really interesting part of the forecast because the heat builds back, but this go around, it's definitely going to be stickier and more humid. So a lot more instability, which could mean more pop-up afternoon storms. So while it's going to be a little bit more uncomfortable late next week and next weekend, at least the potential for afternoon and evening thunderstorms could be back in the forecast by next weekend, which would be great for us to see. So coming up, Tim Buckley's going to join me. We're going to talk about bugs. We're going to talk about the aurora, the drought monitor, and a cool study out about the pollen season, which might shock you. That's coming up after the break.
Weather Impact Live with Brad Panovich is sponsored by Moisture Lock, crawl space, basement, and foundation repair experts serving the Carolinas since 1988.
Tired of all this rain? Does your yard look like a swamp after it rains? Hi, I'm Greg Doggett with Moisture Lock, Charlotte's premier waterproofing and foundation repair company. The longer water sits, the softer soil will become. This can cause foundation issues. If you're having drainage issues, contact Moisture Lock. We'll get the water away from your home and out of your yard.
Moisture Lock, stabilize, enhance, protect.
Welcome back, everybody. As always, Tim Buckley is going to join me here from WFMY. We're back in the saddle tonight, Tim. We had some technical issues yesterday. We got them fixed, I think, Tim. We're all set here. The good thing the weather's boring.
I unplugged everything.
Yeah.
And then I plugged it back in. I used the little dust sprayer, like the Game Boy cartridge you used to do. We're good to go.
Yeah.
That's right.
Blow in that cable. Plug it back. It's silly we did that. I mean, I was
good to
like,
be with you.
But it worked. It worked. It was a crazy thing. It worked,
It made you feel good. That's right.
Yeah.
You're helping.
Oh, man. Tecmo Bowl always played better after that. All right, so Tim, it's Thursday. Obviously, it's drought monitor day, and great news. I'm not shocked. 2 weeks in a row, we had steady improvement, and I think this is kind of what we expect, Tim. If we're going to get into a pattern where we're going to see improvement, it's going to be baby steps like this. I think everybody wants this to be a quick fix, but this is kind of what happens when you get into a more favorable pattern. You see stair step to improvement, but not removal. The problem is we could go back the other way pretty quickly, especially in the summer months.
Yeah, and this is showing how localized it is too. So for your area, the clear message is steady improvement week after week. For us up here in the Triad, we've had very little to no improvement.
Yeah.
We've been in a D3 for the majority of our counties for the last 3 to 4 weeks. So there's really not been a lot of reduction locally. If you're in Greensboro or Winston-Salem or Lexington, it's kind of still status quo, but at least it hasn't been getting worse. So that's been one positive for us. I'm just worried, as you probably are, that the trend here is not great. We haven't had a great week for rainfall already. Next week doesn't look great either. So we've got some work to do.
Yeah, and Robert can bring up my laptop real quickly. Just to your point, Tim, this is the 30-day rainfall anomaly. You can see the blues and greens down towards us. That's a positive anomaly. That means we've had more than our average. And then for whatever reason, from like Boone, from North Wilkesboro to the Triad to really the Triangle, there's this like line of just like where it has not rained much at all towards the Virginia border. That area has been incredibly dry over the last 30 days compared to the rest of North Carolina and especially South Carolina, which has had a ton of rain.
And do you know what's interesting? We were chatting with the Weather Service in Raleigh about this a little bit because it is a weird feature. They were supposing that we had an extended cold air damming event where you had that wedge of cooler air that kind of lingered, especially along the I-40 corridor in north. And what that did, it kind of focused the storm zone with differential heating and all that, where you get those heavier thunderstorms. It kind of meant that set up farther to the south and South Carolina and in your area.
Yep.
Not so much up here. So we got extended light rain, but we didn't get a lot of heavy rain. And so that matters when you're trying to fix a drought and fill up the ponds and lakes and all those things.
Yeah, it's very true. And, as much as we'd love to see the pattern stay wet, Tim, this week has been amazing weather-wise. I mean, for early June, we potentially could have 4 mornings in a row in the 50s. I looked back. All of last summer, we had 4 of those days the entire summer, and we're going to do this in less than 6 days here in June. This is almost unheard of to have such beautiful weather in early June. It feels like April weather showing up in June.
It does, and it makes you kind of question what the actual air temperature is outside. So whereas today it might have been in the upper 80s, it doesn't really feel like it. And tomorrow's 90 might not feel like it either. So enjoy that while you can. It's more of a Arizona 90 than a North Carolina 90.
Yeah, and that's probably why I'm a little concerned about the drought monitor, because as great as this feels to us, Tim, this is how you get high evaporation rates, right? You're really drying things out quickly.
It is.
In this kind of setup. So any rain you did get, this is going to be sucking moisture out of your grass, your shrubs, your garden. This is how you dry things out really quickly.
Yeah, a lot of times you can get into something called a flash drought in the summertime when it's really hot and you have these dry days and you're kind of baking everything. You can not even be in drought conditioning and develop it pretty fast. Well, we're already in a drought, and the same things can still be true. You can make it worse a lot more quickly as well. So we'd like that to change. Maybe it will in the next couple of weeks. Maybe there'll be some tropical mischief. Who knows? There's some signals of that in the long range, but not anytime soon.
Yeah, that's all. The long range, yeah, it does maybe some potential down in the Gulf to help us out. Maybe next weekend and beyond, we'll see.
Maybe.
But what are the other side effects of this pattern, Tim? And I know you guys had the air quality alert today. We've got one in effect tomorrow.
That's right.
Kind of typical, high pressure, all that sunshine today, the long daylight hours. It doesn't take long for that ground level ozone to kind of build up. And what happens about ground level ozone, people may not be familiar with this tends to build up because we're not mixing out the atmosphere and there's no wind and rain. This can build over days. So by the time you get to the end of the week, everyone driving in the sun, these ozone levels can really build up over the week.
Yeah, and that thing people might have heard about but might not really understand is that air stagnation. What is that? That's basically what Brad's just talking about. The air's not going up and down the way it usually would. The winds are pretty calm and light, and so whatever's in the air is just kind of staying in the air as well. So here in Guilford County, what they do is when we've got a burn ban, when we have a code orange, they also enforce a burn ban because we don't want to be putting smoke into the atmosphere as well. So if you're in Guilford tomorrow, you can't be burning stuff. That's an offense, and that might extend into Saturday as well. But I like the graphic you have there, Brad, explaining kind of this is an abstract concept. Ozone isn't really something that you can see, and so for a lot of people, it's difficult to understand.
Yeah, we always think of ozone, the ozone layer. We think that's a good thing, protects us from UV light, but that's the good kind of ozone. The ground level ozone is not what we like, and usually what happens is a chemical reaction, Tim, right? You got nitrous oxide, volatile organic compounds from vehicles. Two-cycle engines are a big problem here, the leaf blowers, the lawn mowers, those put out a lot of this. That mixes with sunlight and heat near the ground, and it creates a chemical reaction, and we get ground level ozone. Now, this primarily affects those with respiratory issues, young and old. But I'll be honest, if you're someone who exercises in the middle of the day, you may notice this feeling like, hey, I'm having trouble catching my breath because this affects your body's ability to absorb oxygen from the air. So this is really where people probably should exercise or walk in the evenings and the mornings and not in the middle of the day.
It's true. And so you can do a couple things to combat this. You can shift your activity to a different point of time, like you said, or you could just, if you really have asthma or other sort of respiratory problems, you might want to just nix it all together, especially during the hottest part of the day. This could be an issue going through the weekend, really.
Yeah, it definitely could be. So look, I wanted to transition real quickly to, you talked a little bit about this, I know, in your local forecast, and the Aurora Borealis. So I think we've kind of gotten tricked into thinking every time we get one of these, Tim, we're going to get this great setup like we had. We've been blessed. The last 2 years, we've had just incredible auroras in North Carolina, which are almost unheard of. So every time this happens, I feel like I got to temper people's expectations a little bit. But we do have a solar flare that impacted the Earth's ionosphere today. I'm showing you from a website called Solar Ham. They're up in Canada. I like showing them because they show real-time updates here. It's interesting, Tim. Today they've actually downgraded today's forecast. They still have tonight and tomorrow in the strong category. But sometime tonight, there's at least the potential that there could be a decent aurora. Now, whether it's down here in North Carolina, that's always the dilemma because you have to have a pretty strong what we call KP index. Right now, the forecast, it was 7. They've actually downgraded it to 6, which tells me even more so that I'm probably not going to see it. But, somebody in the Blue Ridge Parkway or somebody up in Shenandoah Valley in a high mountain peak looking north might be able to catch this with a long exposure camera. But probably naked eye in the cities, we're not going to see this tonight.
It's not like predicting the weather. It's harder than that. Sometimes there can be surprises one way or the other. But like you said, there's some signals here that don't really point to it being a huge event for too many people. But you'd probably rather be in North Dakota than North Carolina for this one. That makes a lot of sense. Still, I bet some of those masterful photographers, Peter Forrester's going to have an amazing photo somehow.
Peter will find it.
Where are these things?
Yeah, Peter, he's got the great spots, and as a good photographer, he doesn't reveal his locations. But probably the peak is going to be
dark sky
later tonight at some point. The other problem, Tim, is as we have an 83% waning gibbous moon tonight, which rises around midnight, so that's going to give you some extra light in the sky. Also, I was looking, astronomical twilight tonight is like till 10 o'clock, and in the morning it starts at 5, so that also doesn't give you great viewing for something where the northern lights are like looking at the Milky Way. You want it to be super dark, and unfortunately, tonight probably not ideal. Probably most of this will happen while the sun is up, which It's happening. We just can't see it. But you got a great graphic there tonight. I saw that picture you posted. That was awesome. Where did that picture come from earlier? Because Jupiter and Venus look so cool when you can see them together like this.
Yeah, maybe it's the one I was posting from just in our backyard here at the station, right in between our TV tower and another old radar tower that we used to have here. They were just positioned right next to each other and super bright. So we've been talking about this throughout the week, Brad, and as you know, they're kind of getting a little closer day by day. So what's cool is, and if you haven't noticed this at home, folks, Jupiter and Venus are going to be the two brightest things in the sky, right around 9 o'clock to 10 o'clock, right in the same direction that the sun goes down. And by Sunday, they should be, close to touching, or at least very close to one another. They call that a conjunction of planets. So pretty cool stuff. And boy, the ease factor, you don't need a binocular, you don't need anything. You can just look up, and we get a lot of questions, you and I, when this happens, because you can't help but see it. And so people are inclined to say, what is that? And we love when you ask us, but you could also get one of these free apps, Sky View, Night Sky, anything like that. You can hold your phone up and it'll tell you what it is, which is great. And it's a cool way to get the kids involved, to show them there's a couple planets.
Yeah, and those are two of the easiest ones to see, Tim. I always tell people Venus is the second brightest object in the sky other than the moon. So if it's super bright and it's not the moon, it's probably going to be Venus, because it is so bright. It's close to us. It's fully cloud-covered planet, so it reflects a ton of light. It's really easy to spot, and it does stick out, especially in a clear sky. One last topic, and I came across this today, Tim, and this is probably something that will relate to a lot of our followers and listeners here. I saw this study the New York Times posted about pollen seasons. We've talked a lot about the pollen seasons here getting longer, being more intense, and a lot of that we thought was associated with higher temperatures, which there is some correlation. But this study was very fascinating to me, and it goes to our astronomy part as well, that some of the increase in pollen in urban environments may be due to light pollution. Now, this kind of makes sense when you think about it, Tim, that urban plants, if there's more light, they're going to grow a little bit quicker and longer past sunset because they have artificial light. But I thought this was interesting that they tied this to extended pollen seasons, because light pollution was leading to the plants producing more pollen, which blew my mind.
It's not something you would think about. It is a man-made impact on the climate. We know there are so many ways that we can impact the climate, whether it be from carbon dioxide or driving our cars or building roads or anything like that. But this is just simply from artificial light. And gosh, if you ever don't realize how much artificial light there is, just get out to the real country sometime.
Yes.
I mean, you go out in the sticks, you go up the Blue Ridge Parkway, the Outer Banks, something like that. When you really see a dark sky, or maybe you notice how often you don't see that. And so it's fascinating. I didn't realize plants reacted to it in this way. Was that news to you as well?
It was. It makes sense when I think about it, but I guess that's just the nature of light pollution, becoming. I think about light pollution a lot because I love looking at the night sky, and when you want to go see like the Northern Lights or, I try to shoot some backyard astronomy stuff. It's hard in the city. There's things that you can't really see because of light pollution. The other time we talk a lot about this, Tim, is the bird migration. We've talked about that on this show, and these city lights, especially the ones that are aimed up on buildings, like the uplights. All these buildings love this like landscape lighting. It's really distracting to migrating birds. It actually causes them to fly into buildings because of this. So I think there is like a big movement, Tim, to reduce the amount of outdoor lighting. And if you do have outdoor lighting, to have the hood or the light reflected down towards the ground and not up into the sky, because that tends to be the worst kind of light. We know we need street lights, but if they can design them, and some people are designing them better, where the light is projected down and not up, that seems to be kind of ideal. To your point, one thing, I was in Hawaii last summer on vacation, and the first thing that struck me, Tim, was first, like you said, you can see a lot of the sky, but they have ordinances there where there's very little street lights or light pollution at all because of the wildlife there. They actually restrict a lot of outdoor illumination, and you notice it right away when you drive around at night, because it's hard to see, first of all, and almost no houses or anything have any lights. And I asked someone locally, and they said, they restrict it because of all the wildlife. It's birds and also marine life, because sea turtles react to that as well.
That's a really good idea. It's not something we think about a lot necessarily, but it is a good idea. And what's interesting, in North Carolina, you would think the darkest places would be the mountains, and they're good options. But something I was reading years ago is that really the Outer Banks is actually better in some cases for a dark sky because the Pamlico Sound is so wide, right? You've got that big, wide body of water separating the narrow strip of land from the Atlantic Ocean. So sure, Nags Head's got plenty of light pollution, but it's a small town relative to everything else. And boy, if you get down on Hatteras and those Pea Island areas, you're really in the dark sky too. So that can be a favorite of photographers that are trying to get the Milky Way. But anything that we can do to kind of improve that, I know they've been trying in the national parks like Grand Canyon and everything, just to kind of have all those lights pointed downward instead of upward. It can make a difference. But maybe this is part of the reason why we can't stop sneezing for months at a time. Not just the tree pollen, but even the ragweed pollen could be bad in the fall as well.
Yeah, I think the ragweed is a really interesting part of this because if you think about even lights aimed down, what are they going to be shining on? Like grass, right? They're not the trees, the light shining up probably affects them, but the ragweed probably struck me more than anything because that's on the ground. So that's any light that you have outside is probably going to be impacting those. Also they talked about the urban heat island, which we know a lot about. That creates urban areas stay a lot warmer. It's why the last frost in the city is always much later in the season than the rural areas. So it was just an interesting study, and it really does go to show you, Tim, like you mentioned, that we have a bigger impact on our environment than people sometimes want to give credit to, and it's in various ways, whether it's roads, whether it's CO2, but in this case it's light pollution, which is a big part. One area you talked about, the Outer Banks, I was going to mention how that's such a great spot for photography. That Frying Pan Tower, which is offshore by 90 miles.
Oh, yeah.
I've seen pictures from out there, Tim. It's so dark out there, and they use red lights on the tower so it doesn't affect anything. I've seen some amazing photography from out there, and that's 90 miles offshore. So think about how dark that sky is.
I'd love to get out there sometime. They still talk about it. I think they still let you stay on there as a little
it's an
motel or
Airbnb.
whatever, as an adventure. Airbnb, that's right. It's cool. You can take a boat or a helicopter, I think, but that would be sweet.
All right, I'm pitching it now. We're going to take this show out there live because they have great Wi-Fi service out there, I hear. So.
They do. They've got a shark camera underwater that looks at all the stuff going around.
Yeah, and I'll bring the Starlink just for backup. We should be good. That would be amazing. So many stories you could do out there because it's just a cool area. All right, Tim. Well, we're almost out of time. One last thing I want to talk about because you mentioned this last night, and I know James Scott posted about this, and you asked me about it. We had a mayfly hatch last night. And I'm curious tonight. I'm already looking at the radar. So the area lakes and streams, be on the lookout for that tonight because I bet we're going to see another hatch tonight, Tim.
Yeah, James is still picking them out of his